the Let Us In podcast. Today we're talking about horror novel adaptations into movies with a very special guest. I'm Emma, aka Emma of the Impact.
I am Justine, aka JustineUFF.
I'm Crystal, aka Creepin, it's spooky.
And our special guest is.
I am Stephanie, aka Books in the Freezer.
Welcome. So, Stephanie, Books in the Freezer is your podcast, right? Where are you guys found your podcast?
I mean, on all podcasting platforms.
Okay.
Yeah.
You guys,
Spotify, Apple.
You guys don't do any YouTube or anything, but you're also on TikTok,
No.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I make TikTok videos about horror books in general.
Cool.
I love the name Books in the Freezer. Where does the title of Books in the Freezer come from? I want to hear it.
It comes from a episode of Friends where Joey talks about reading The Shining and he says it gets so scary that he puts it in the freezer. And it's the episode where like he gets Rachel to read that and then Rachel gets him to read Little Women. But it was the idea that like a book is so scary that you put it in the freezer, and then we use that for our rating system when we're talking about books. When it's like a really scary book, we'll say it's a freezer book and then down to fridge room temperature. So that's our scale.
That is
Ooh,
so
so I can't wait to
clever.
hear your scale on our choices tonight.
Okay. I definitely have opinions.
You interview authors fairly regularly as well.
Yeah, it's been fun. I started doing just kind of regular author interviews, but then I've started incorporating them more into our general episodes, which, if people don't know, are like genre specific. So we'll do an episode on like haunted house horror, where this year we did like workplace horror, hotel horror. And authors have been pretty game for coming on and recommending books like within genres. It was really fun. David Demchuk came on and we did like Faustian Bargain, like Deal with the Devil.
Oh, I love
Horror.
those stories.
Yeah,
Yes.
and Paul Tremblay came on and we did like unreliable narrators.
Cool.
That's
That
really
sounds
cool.
fun.
What's drawn you to horror books? What's your relationship with horror been with movies and books?
I was very interested in horror at a young age. Like I'm of the Goosebumps generation, like going to the book fairs and trying to like, get all the
Scholastics.
Goosebumps books. I'm trying to use them all for my accelerated reader points. And then when I was a teenager, my family got into like fundamentalism. So then that all became like off limits. And so it just honestly was more titillating for me. And it was more of a thing like
Forbidden.
like I remember going to Blockbuster and like looking at the covers of the DVDs and being like, someday I will watch this. Like I remember picking up 13 Ghosts and I'm like, one of these days
And
I will watch
it's
this
a great
movie.
movie.
Nice.
I love that.
Me too.
One of our
And, like
choices.
Candyman.
Oh yeah. For me, it was the Sci-Fi Channel, and also one of those covers for me was one of our picks tonight. And so this is a question that's loaded that you don't have to answer. I don't know if there is an answer. So as an avid reader of horror and as an avid watcher of horror, have you noticed that for you personally, what's the difference between the mediums? Like when it comes to sound and what makes something scary for you? Because a book can be just as scary as a movie on a personal level. Do you feel like there's a certain aspect that makes a book scarier or a movie scarier?
I think it all depends on dread. And I think in one of our picks, one of the books had a lot of dread and just loaded scenes with that the director took it a completely different direction, but that I don't think were as prevalent in the movie. And I think movies obviously can do jump scares better. They do exist in books. I see authors try to be like, and there she was. But obviously those are not as effective as like when you're on screen and you have a sound cue and something pops up.
It's usually a shocking revelation, and
Yes.
when a character is like it blows
Yeah.
the character's mind and it blows
Mhm.
our minds. Like, what? Next things I want to say to wrap up our intro here are more to us as a group. And I have some film theory books, and one of the books size the idea of adaptation of a novel is like how much a conversation that is held since the 1990s is the importance of fidelity and how it's not necessarily important in certain aspects. And even if somebody kind of sticks to the fidelity of the book, exactly the same story, it's still somebody interpreting a story from their perspective. So they could get everything right to them, what the story means to them, but it translates very different in a movie. And I think one of our choices is one of those. But I think he knew that. But usually they found doing actual studies, watching movies, the two things that happen a lot with adaptations of novels into movies is that there's usually a heavier emphasis on romantic relationships and there's also the dulling, dimming of any political or social political topics. And do you guys feel that even widespread theatrical release horror, do you think horror is less subject to that? I do. A little bit less falls into that. It can, but
I think so. I feel like the horror movies that I've seen, and maybe it's because I feel like when people choose to adapt horror, it is coming from a place of like fandom and love. And I feel like a little more understanding of the source material. But there's been very few times where I watch a movie and I'm like, they did not get it. Like we talked earlier, like my best friend's exorcism was one where I'm
they did
like,
not
the
get it.
soul of the book was not there. You may have gotten some plot points, you may have gotten the character names right and the main idea, but there was something that was missed in translation.
Anybody that's read My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, which you have a great episode out that you did fairly recently, is the important part is the my best friend part. Like that is the huge emphasis of the book, and it just doesn't exist in the movie at all. It's just plot, and it's a summary of the plot.
I haven't
Yeah.
read the book. I only watched the movie, and I felt like it was a regurgitation of every other best friend story where friends were best friends, but they grew apart kind of thing, and then they had to find their friendship again. And
Yeah.
it's
no.
just, it was really boring. So
Yeah.
wasn't
It was
as
not a
into
good movie.
It was pretty lackluster. In the book, we spend the first part of the book really building up like how they became friends. And so you become so invested in this
Mhm.
friendship. And I think the ending was so much more impactful when she like exercises the demon through the power of friendship, and like all their inside jokes and shared experience are things you've seen or have mentioned or that you're familiar with.
Mhm.
Like, she was just like
Yeah.
saying stuff at the end that it's like, okay, but people don't know what any of this is.
Yeah, we haven't
Right.
heard you guys listen on repeat in the car the Phil Collins songs.
Yeah.
And the power of Phil Collins, it means nothing to us in the movie. I don't think they used Phil
Right.
Collins at all in the
Well,
in
No,
the
they
movie,
didn't.
but-
They changed it to
The
But
movie
here, that
definitely,
movie.
they're definitely a victim of the trend because the book was trending at the time, and they immediately adapted it into a film and pushed it out so fast. Like
It's
the
just
book went
Stranger
from
Things,
trending
yeah.
to being on streaming within the same year. That's insane.
That fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very fast. Like it
Whoa.
was, that book was still trending when they announced the film, and the film dropped within months of announcing the film. It was so quick. I didn't expect it to be that good. I was excited, but that was a kind of a big indicator
Yeah.
that it wasn't going to be very good. But to answer your question, Emma, I think horror is one of those categories, like you said, there's a fandom involved, there's more heart to it. And directors who seek out to do novel adaptations for horror, typically you'll find that they're doing it because they love the book, they love the source material, or they love horror. You tend to get a lot better result because of that. The exception being Stephen King, partly because Stephen King is like material, like a
Yeah.
money-making engine of material. So you could see a lot of people adapting films in not such a great way for King, just to get a King novel out there in a movie, which is why his can be hit or miss. But even then, I think that it's still, you're getting more hits than misses. So horror is a bit of an exception to that.
Horror is an easier genre to tell, whether it's a political or
Yeah.
emotional thing through metaphor. One of the easier genres, anyway.
Yeah.
There tends to be a little less to leave up into interpretation too, except for one of the films that we'll talk about. All sorts of interpretation.
Are we ready to go into the ruins?
Oh, let's talk
Not
about the
physically,
ruins.
but yes. Let's
We ready
talk
to
about
go to the ruins?
Yeah,
So-
go to the ruins.
Let's start this with which people in our Discord will know what they did to me, what they did to me, what he did to me. So I have this weird. It's probably the strongest parasocial relationship I've ever had, and it's one of hatred for no reason. It's very psychotic
No.
reason. Patrick Wilson.
A beloved man in horror.
Yeah,
Sorry, dude.
Actually, so he embraces the horror genre. He doesn't look down upon it. He directed the new Insidious. I
Very
have
good
not
looking.
seen. He's blandly handsome. He is.
He
very
is not bland. He
bland.
is very
He is-
good looking.
No, he is not.
He's not.
He is such a good looking dad.
He's okay, whatever. It's subjective, but anyway, he's considered conventionally attractive by some people, and I've never seen an interview with him. Even I don't think so. There's no reason I just want to punch him in the face. I am not an audiobook person, not for snooty reasons. I just can't focus audiobooks unless I'm driving, which I don't have a long drive most anywhere. I read the others, but I didn't have time to do the ruins. I just bought it, and then as I started listening to it, I'm like,
of all of the ones, this is the one that she gets the audiobook for.
Right? Yeah.
Patrick Wilson is
It's
the narrator.
so much more delicious because of that.
And then I messaged on our Discord, I'm like, I have to listen to 15 hours of Patrick Wilson's fucking voice. And then Justine sends the picture of you guys talking about it. Let's do the ruins. Patrick Wilson does the voice, and I wanted to revisit it. Oh my God. He does a great job narrating it. But anyway, you guys have more feelings about the difference between the book and the movie than I do. So that's all. That's mostly what I have to say. Warming up to him. I know it's psychotic. I hate him for no reason.
So I'm glad we didn't tell her because she ended up listening to it and slowly warming up to Patrick Wilson. So all in good result, worth it. But also it was so funny to see her run to Discord and like immediately say, Patrick Wilson!
I hate the way he says merman. I hate it.
And I was giddy. Like I have never ran to my TikTok messages faster to screenshot. Like,
Oh my God.
When you were like, oh, Emma's gonna hate this.
Not sorry.
Because I was using it as like a selling
Worth
point.
it.
I'm like, also, Patrick Wilson narrates the audiobook.
She
So
was.
funny.
She was like,
But
oh.
I
it was
blame
like
him.
the
I
thing.
feel like he doesn't know I exist, but I feel like there's this energy where he's against me. Like he did this. He narrated the book because he knew, even though I don't
It's
listen
really
to audiobooks.
me. I did this to you.
He was playing a long
No.
game like years ago. Took
Years
this
ago.
gig.
So
I know Emma's
when
gonna
I
be
made
reading really
a
soon.
silly TikTok about this, many people in the comments, even I made it very clear, like there's no reason I dislike this man. It's just all just some weird psychology, and I recognize it. People were like, I've met him, and he's the loveliest person. I'm like, of course he is. Like so many people are like, he's the loveliest, nicest man. Patrick Wilson delivered my baby in a taxi.
I will
that
say,
one
I
didn't
think
happen.
he's a-
That wasn't something.
I think that he is a phenomenal narrator. I think he's very good at that. Unfortunately, he put me to sleep. He's a little too calming. I don't know about his voice is very lulling, but I did get through this book.
All right. What did you
mostly
think?
before bed to fall asleep. One of the big changes, because I'd seen the movie, of course, and I am a sucker for this movie. I like this movie
I
a
do too.
lot. It's one of those, I don't know, it's a time capsule of its era when it came out. What's the matter, Crystal? You don't like this movie?
I've always hated this movie.
I know.
So this
The
is a good
talking
discussion.
plants so much.
Talking plants. I literally hate the plants. We can go into it more because I did read this book, so I do have more.
All right.
I really liked the movie, and reading the book, I could notice right away, like the setting was different. Obviously, it's not like a Incan ruins temple style. It's a hill more than anything.
Yeah.
I actually like the change in the film for a visual
Mhm.
aspect. I think that was really smart.
Yeah.
But
ruins of their lives.
yeah, but it
What
does leave for like
happens?
weird plot holes. Like there would obviously be other entrances if it was like a pyramid, not just going down, but you would probably be able to walk around the sides and find another way in or something, right? I don't know. Anyways, so I didn't mind it, but I also did notice that the characters in the books were better. They were better than the characters on film.
So
Yeah.
much better. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Huge difference. I've watched this movie twice and I have not enjoyed it either time. And I'm so glad you picked this for a movie or a book for us to read because I've never read the book and I loved the book. I
Oh,
loved
good.
it. Yes, no, I thought the book was so good. I wish that it had translated better to the
Yeah.
movie. And like so many of the characters had changed. They just made all the characters do so many different things in compare. I don't know why they did that because
Yeah.
we were talking. There was no need to change anything. Like the
I
way that
didn't
they did
think
it.
so. Yeah.
No.
I was talking about this too in my group chat, but Amy, I think, is one of the characters that is like hated from
Mhm.
movie. And it's the way that they write her. That is not how she's written in the book. In the book, she's a much more competent character. In
Yeah.
the book, her and Jeff are both going to med school. And she's the one that speaks Spanish. So she's the one that's like translating for the group on the way there. And those are all traits that they give to just Jeff. And so like the main conflict in their relationship in the movie is that he's going to med school and she's upset about it. So she's like doing all this like reckless behavior because she can't deal
Yeah.
with him leaving her. And I'm like,
Yeah.
there was no need to do that to her character.
No, absolutely.
And
not.
I like how you
I wonder,
say
wonder if he had a breakup with his girlfriend or something. The minute he wrote the book to when he did the film.
because Stephanie told us earlier that the author of the book wrote the screenplay, so
Yeah.
why did it so many changes?
So
I don't know if it was to make it easier for Jeff to be the de facto leader that's like making the decisions because like he's the one that has all the knowledge. Because in the book, like she's the one that figures out that the guy's back is broken. She's the
Mhm.
one that is like can't feel his toes. Like we're gonna need to do something. His back is broken.
And it smells
And-
like shit too.
Yeah.
It's very, very clear on that in both the book and the movie. I'm glad that's clarified.
There's a lot of like fecal and urine talk in the book, actually, so
Yeah.
much more than in the movie. They really
Yeah.
dive deep. But I thought that the vines or the plants, if you will, in the book were so much more terrifying than what they actually managed to portray in the movie. Because in the movie, I thought they were super lame. But Justine, I know you said it's very true to the time that the movie was made. It makes sense for the movie, like not the worst movie I've ever seen. But in the book, I think that the plants were so much more effectively scary. I would never want to be around those things in real life. But in
What
the
were
in
the
movie,
main
they're so
differences?
they were just so much more they mimicked more and they did
Mhm.
a lot more like they made them smell like fresh baked bread and like meat and stuff to make them
Yeah.
hungry because in the book they were like starving and in the
Yeah.
movie they don't really go into that like they're out
Yeah.
in these ruins and they're just kind of like chilling but they're like they dive so much more into like they're
They really
hungry,
mess
they're
with
trying to
them.
they do. They're really trying to mess with their minds because they're trying to ration their food and stuff. And to me, that's frightening. And they just mimic more like to full on, like, they have a full on mimicking of a sex scene to
Mhm.
make so and so think that somebody's cheating on him. And like, there's just, they really mess with the group. Whereas in the movie, they're just like mimicking a cell phone. And like, it's just,
So
They
that
do the
scene-
sex scene. We see like the after. We
not
just see
well.
Stacy
Yeah.
going over and being like, "What the hell, guys?"
yeah.
But she's
It's just not as
screaming it, so it's
detailed.
not as effective. She's like, "I saw you guys have it." It's delivered that way,
Yeah.
so it's you take it less seriously. At least
Yeah.
that's how it
Way
came off
less,
to
yeah.
me.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
as effective in the movie. But
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I
it's
agree.
a typical thing that happens with. I don't know why he made certain changes, so many changes with the characters, because it doesn't. Because a lot of the times when it comes to book and movie translations, it has to do with time and space, and
Yeah.
the time you have to tell the story within like less than 2 hours. So it didn't seem like any changes he made benefited that, which was weird. But it's the usual thing where you get to know the characters so much more in this particular book, in this particular adaptation, which is common. You get to spend more time with like the story of her uncle that died in the car crash and her having this memory of him being drunk visiting for the holidays and just saying that he just drifted into life and things like that where
Yeah.
when certain moments within the present are just so much more impactful.
Yeah.
But that you expect that a lot of the time with a longer book.
Yeah.
Well, not that it's that long, but it's for to movie adaptations.
Yeah.
Yeah, with books you do get more exposition that you can't really translate to film very easily. This book I think had a little too much description sometimes. That's my one complaint about it. Some stuff can be left to us to decide and imagine and fill in the gaps. Like we don't need every single descriptor, especially around dialogue and people's feelings and the way that they're saying things to each other. It's like at the very beginning especially there was a lot of it's like every line that someone would say he had a description like context for why they're saying it that way or why they're feeling that feeling. Like there's no room for us to interpret or to fill in the gaps as readers what this character's feeling or going through or why they would think that way because he spells it out every dialogue. So that's my one complaint on his writing style that I had.
Yeah. What did you think of the changes in ending?
Crystal?
are we talking about like who died and who survived type deal? Like that type of comparison?
Yeah, because that book, like, I think they all die.
I would
yeah,
prefer they
yeah,
all die.
Yeah, then it's
Yeah.
not like the movie where Amy makes it out.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Amy makes it out in the movie, which I mean, she dies relatively earlier on in the book.
Yeah, Stacy's the
and then it
last to
gets
go
and
in the
Stacy,
book.
yeah, which was I thought she was going to survive. I thought they were going to make Stacy survive, and then she
Yeah.
just
I had in my
Often.
notes from I had a post-it note from the first time I read it in 2013 where I had a post-it note. I'm like, is Stacy final girl?
Yeah,
And
I thought she was going to make it.
I was like, I was reading it why did I think that? But I'm like, yeah, it does kind of
Actually.
make you think that.
I
Yeah.
thought because she ate all the food, and I was like, she's gonna survive. She's gonna get her strength back, and she's gonna get out of there. But no, just a very depressing ending, actually.
Yeah.
I
think
kind of
prefer
into
that.
it. Yeah. I'm like,
It
I'm
was
into that.
gorier in the book too. It felt gorier
It's
to me.
so
Some of
much gorier. It's so much gorier, I think, and it's a lot darker because you have Jeff literally considering eating Amy when she dies, which that doesn't go that dark in the movie, in my opinion. It's
Yeah.
his
It all
girlfriend.
happened so fast. I don't think they have. And the plants take the bodies away.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
into the bushes. I love
Which the
that scene.
plants
I don't
in the
know why.
book, I do too, actually. But the plants in the book, they mess with the dead bodies, which I really liked. They'd make Amy sit up like she's still alive, and or
puppetry.
yeah, it made it sound so much cooler in the book. See, I liked the extra descriptive moments in the book, and I think
It
that's why
works
the movie
sometimes,
lagged.
yeah.
It did, yeah. But
I think that the ending actually in the movie would have been better for the book, and the book ending would have been better for the movie.
Really?
Yeah, because I think that the book could have leaned into her basically leaving and taking this invasive, horrible plant with her basically into the world. And that's similar how the ending of a film called Gaia ends, which actually feels more similar to the book than the Ruins adaptation
the
did.
same
The
author?
Ruins. I don't think
No,
so.
Scott Smith's only done 2 novels. He did this in A Simple Plan. It's a movie too. It has an adaptation.
interesting.
So I feel like her leaving and taking that with her could have been explained in his style, really
Mhm.
dark and freaky way with the connotations there of
Yeah.
what could, the implications there of what could be happening. But in the movie, I really wish they all just would have died because I
Yeah.
feel like that would have added some more gravity to the situation than her the happy ending thing was such a horrible phase in horror. I hated it. This happened a lot in that time where there would always be one survivor and they are giving the audience what they want, and I hate it. It's such a cop out. Kill them all. We don't want them out. They got
Yeah. I
they
mean,
got
this is
vicious man-eating
happy,
plants
but
on
it
them. I
has
don't want to get out of there.
really dark implications.
Yeah.
Stephanie, do you want to tell us who has a special thanks in the book and why?
So Ben Stiller is thanked in the acknowledgments. I know when I heard this on a podcast episode about the movie, and then when I was reading the book, and at the end he's doing the acknowledgments, and it's a big thank you to Ben Stiller, and I was like, Ben Stiller. Ben Stiller had a production company and bought the rights to this book before it officially came out, so he was the one with the rights. So the movie came out pretty close to the book being released. So it's the Ben Stiller Ruins connection, if anyone. It's ever on trivia.
That would be a trivia question.
Yeah.
I think that's a deep cut one, though. I think that's deep cut.
It is. Very deep cut.
Very deep cut.
We go just quickly. I didn't because none of us were able to get it, right?
So the thing is, there were a lot of different versions of the graphic novel, and I'm like,
I got this one, and I didn't realize. I thought because it said volume 1, this was the right one.
Yeah.
But this is volume 1 of a very different series.
So my thoughts on the adaptation were that I thought it was a bit better than the graphic novel because I thought it cleaned a lot of stuff up because the novel's opening up for a whole series and we're getting a lot of backstory and stuff that I just didn't enjoy and didn't connect with. And I thought the movie did a good job at streamlining the story. There's a few things changed, like Josh Hartnett's character and his wife are still together in the movie. It opens up with them looking at a sunset. And so things like that.
So sad because of how it ends.
I know. And then I thought they really nailed the vampire design straight from the graphic novel. If you've seen the way that they're depicted in the graphic novel, I was like, wow, the makeup department did an amazing job adapting what the vampires look like.
I remember first watching 30 Days a Night, and I was like, man, why are their eyes all weird? They look all
I just
weird.
love
and then it grew on me.
Without reading the graphic novel, I think it's just such a cool vampire design. It's scary. They're actually really scary.
Yeah. And they describe them like shark teeth, right?
Yeah.
If you can see some of these, I'll show them. Oh, there's a lot of shine there.
Oh, yes. That actually is pretty. Yeah, they're frightening in that too.
Yeah, but I felt like even down to like actors they cast like really look like the vampires from that first graphic novel. I was extremely impressed with how that
Oh, yeah.
translated.
Yeah.
Especially because I thought that art style is like dark and messy. So I was really surprised by how well it translated.
Oh wow.
I wonder, I wouldn't know from experience, but I wonder if there's a kind of a different. I wonder how much filmmakers, I guess it depends on the filmmaker or the team of filmmakers that are adapting a graphic novel as opposed to a novel, because one that I can think of recently is Sandman. I loved how I loved the characters and everything. It's not, the look wasn't colorful enough for me, which sounds weird. There's so much color in the graphic novel.
Yeah.
It didn't, but I feel like with certain stories and certain graphic novels or comics, especially if they're really close to you, they're never gonna get the look right, no matter how close it look. Like you could look at a page and look at the still, and it could look the same, but you're like, it's still not quite right, even though you visually see it. I don't know.
I feel like 30 Days of Night should have been a better series or franchise than what we were given because it was such a good film. But
Is
it's
there
one
a
of those
second one?
films. There's
a second one,
I think
right?
there's
There's
a
like
couple.
yeah, I feel like there is like
but
at
they're
least a
really
sequel.
bad. Like
Oh.
they're like it's one of those movies that I think didn't get appreciated when it came out as it's appreciated now for how good it is, which is unfortunate because I think it is a stellar vampire film, an amazing setting. I love those isolated snowy settings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
Very
graphic
effective.
novel design really lended to the way that they chose to do the filmography of this movie. And you could tell because it's very muted in tone and color, except for when it's dealing with the blood.
Yeah.
Much brighter, which is exactly how this graphic novel looks.
Mhm.
Everything's very muted, except for when there's blood. It's bright red, which is so cool. And I think visually it's very appealing to watch. And it doesn't feel like you're watching like a black and white film. It's just you could tell like blood just stands out in that environment a lot more. So they did a good job with that. And I think Josh Hartnett's character and him being divorced or separated from his wife was actually kind of nice
Yeah.
way to like have some conflict between them as
Mhm.
trust and decisions, but then them still be able to be a team so easily.
Yeah.
It was cool. And like, the ending was so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Which is probably why it didn't get good series, like a good franchise or series with it, because Josh Hartnett is so good.
Oh,
You would want more of him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
But
she's amazing too. I love
Hmm?
Melissa.
yeah, me
George
too.
is so good. Yeah.
What's his face? The lead vampire. What a
Oh,
perfect casting
Yeah.
for him. He
Danny-
was so
Danny's
scary.
So scary. Yeah.
The scene that I clipped for our promo for this episode was where he like comes into that room and he starts playing the record with his fingernail, opens his mouth and starts screeching, and all the vampires start screeching in burrows. They all start screaming and you can hear him out there, and it's just like this echoing, getting louder and louder. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. Solid.
That's one of your favorite vampire movies, right, Crystal?
Yeah. That is up because I always try to find the scariest version of the things that I can find. 30 Days of Night is more effectively scary than pretty much any other vampire movie, in my opinion.
Pretty much. Yeah.
But lean more towards sexy.
They always lean more sexy. Yeah. Sexy, seductive, like not as
Those are my favorite.
terrifying.
I'm a big fan of Let the Right One In.
That
Oh,
one was really good too.
Yeah.
a good one to mention. That's where the inspiration Justine came up with the name for our podcast.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me how from book to the original Swedish film to the American version, it got less queer in a bad way.
I didn't watch the American one.
It's a good movie,
I've
but
heard
it's
that.
not. It's like less.
One of Chloe Grace Moretz's best performances.
In the book, our main vampire character was a little boy, and
Now genderless,
presents, as a little girl, but doesn't really define themselves that way. And in the movie, in the Swedish movie, I don't remember in the American one, I haven't watched it in a while. Something that comes up is, do you still love me if I wasn't a boy?
Yeah.
And in the movie, it's a little more ambiguous because we think that, they mean like
Vampire.
a vampire. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a girl. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not a girl. Would love me if I wasn't a girl? And it's more so that they're really a little boy. So it's kind, and it's interesting in the book. I don't know if you felt the same way, Stephanie, that it felt like our main character, the human little boy who makes this friend, is battling more with the idea of his homosexuality than being in love with a vampire. It felt that way to me.
It's been a long time since I've read it, so I don't know that I picked up on that. I think in the book we get a little more about like his home life and how sad it is. So at the end, I thought it was really heartbreaking because I really felt for his mom. I think I had also just had kids at that point, and I was like, his poor mom.
I haven't read the
Mhm.
book yet, so I'm glad you said something because I've been meaning to read that book. I got it gifted to me, and if it's gonna mess with me because I'm a mom, I don't know that I'm not gonna read it.
I don't feel like it's not like the emphasis of it, but that's just I was like,
Okay.
"Aw."
There's
Yeah.
also more detail about, because when I saw
Okay,
the
yeah,
Swedish film
I know where you're
first,
going with it. And
I'm not going to go too deep into it. I like the interpretation that comes usually from the original Swedish film, and the American one too, that her companion, who's like, pretending to be her dad-like character, is somebody that she knew since he was a little boy. This is just something that the vampire does throughout the years, and then they age, and she gets a new one. That's how I saw it. But in the book, no,
he's a
they have.
pedophile.
He's a pedophile, yeah,
Mm.
and helping out in that way. But so I like the interpretation that she just cycles, or they don't really ever specify how the vampire identifies, but
Yeah, in the
there's an
book,
identical girl.
the like omniscient third person narrator uses she, but yeah, we don't know.
So the vampire just, at least I like that interpretation better. That she just
Yeah.
recycles these men.
So someone told me that interpretation after I had read it because I was like, "Oh, they're gonna be friends." And someone was like, "Isn't it a little darker than that? Like, think about it." And I was like,
That's how
"Damn."
I interpreted it.
And I was like,
Kind
"It
of a
makes some good."
predator and using him, and like he's a
I do think
vulnerable
she
boy to
genuinely
take
cares
advantage of.
about him too,
Mhm.
though. I think that she cares, but she does know, unless
Mhm.
she doesn't turn him into a vampire in any version. So unless she does that, he is gonna outgrow. Okay, he is gonna die.
Yeah.
I
And
don't think I think she's emotionally detached to a degree because of that knowledge
Yeah.
and that she's using him. But I thought
Mhm.
darkly about that. I don't know.
I did it, and then when it was like brought to my attention, I'm like, "Oh, yeah." And I'm like, "Still good though."
Yeah, it's great.
my memory of how people felt about it, people that read the book were like, "That fucking sucks. The
Yeah.
ending sucks."
Clive Barker is just a really kinky guy. That's what I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I started reading it. I honestly didn't get too far. And I was like, so far this is just a play-by-play.
Thank you for joining us,
There's-
Stephanie. Thank you for joining us. I
Oh, yeah.
appreciate it. We'll
Thank
have
you so much
Stephanie-
for having me.
Yeah, we'll have Stephanie's links in the description below. Don't forget to join our Discord. We can continue the conversation there. And hit like if you enjoyed this video. And leave a comment for us below on what is some of your favorite horror novel adaptations.
So have a good night. Check out Books in the Freezer and let us in where podcasts are found, and TikTok. But again, links in the description.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you again.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you.